Clough, and I'm coming to you from the Southern Vermont Natural History Museum. We're located, obviously, in Southern Vermont, kind of near the town of Wilmington. If you folks get into Southern Vermont skiing at all, you might know Mount Snow. That's our next door neighbor, just up the road. And for the most part, the museum is home to a historic natural history collection. We have the largest collection of native birds and mammals in Vermont. Over 250 species of animals that almost all of them are things you either can or could find in the Northeast. Basically, by the Northeast, I mean pretty much the northeastern quadrant of the United States. So Great Lakes to the seacoast and down, like to Jersey or so. A lot of those are taxidermy collection. Here's a duck. Yes, this is a merganser. You can see this guy swimming around the rivers near you. And that's the foundation of what we have at the museum. We also have rocks and minerals, a lot of other natural history museum stuff. The thing that sets us apart from a lot of different natural history museums, though, is the reason you all have tuned in today. We also have some live animals. And we're going to look at some live animals here this afternoon, and we're going to talk a little bit about how these animals are surviving the winter. And I have an assortment that's going to give us a lot of the major strategies different wildlife in our backyards use to get through these snowy months. Look at all these questions. All right. Okay, good. It's connected. All right, excellent. I don't have to deal with any of that. The library has it under control. So as we are going along today, we're going to meet some animals. We're going to talk about them a little bit. And then if you all have questions, if you guys are blacked out, I'm not going to be able to see you waving your hands. So I think what you were told to do is to try in the chat room. If you are having trouble with the chat room, get so we can see you and wave your hand around, okay? And we'll talk to you directly. So let's get started here, because I'm guessing some of you, I can see a few of you, I'm guessing you guys don't want to hear me talk, right? Want to see some animals? One big smile and nodding head. I'll take it. A thumbs up. Excellent. Thank you very much. So winter is tricky for live animals out in the world for a lot of reasons. Obviously, you guys know, right? If we were all together at the library, you'd be shouting stuff out at me, right? It's really cold. There's deep snow. There's nothing to eat. Those are all great answers. And maybe you were thinking of some of those. We could probably even think of some more. Definitely, though, that cold and nothing to eat and deep snow, that's something that's going to be really limiting for a lot of animals. And we're going to meet animals that address those issues in different ways. Probably the one that is kind of the cop-out answer is just getting out of here, right? I'm not going to deal with the snow. I'm not going to hang out where there's nothing to eat. I'm going to leave. And I bet you know the fancy name for that, right? Especially if I say goose. Oh, Connor waving his hand, knowing the answers. All right. Somebody want to type it in? Do you know what that is? When an animal just seasonally moves around, for us, it would be, most of the animals that do this for us, they're trying to get away from the cold and the snow and the no food. And then they come, oh, nailed it. Heather Henyon, excellent. Migrate, exactly. And lots of different animals migrate. Sea turtles migrate. Reindeer migrate. When I say migrate, though, most of us either think of monarch butterflies or one of these animals. Hold on just a sec, and we'll get him out for you. Some of you are guessing, right? You're like, oh, I bet he's going to show us a narwhal. No, not a narwhal. A bird, right? Birds have an incredible advantage over pretty much everybody else in that they can fly. Now, this red-tailed hawk is a bird that when winter comes, the cold doesn't really bother him. No, he can handle the cold that the Northeast is going to dish out. The problem for this bird is when it snows, because he hunts using his eyes and the little things he wants to eat, the mice, the rabbit, the snakes, the little voles, all those little guys, they can, well, if they're active, they can hide under the snow. And he can't see them if they're under the snow. And for a hawk, if they can't see it, they can't catch it. So with nothing to eat, many birds little songbirds, right? Ducks, geese, birds of prey, they'll leave. They'll take off. They'll go someplace where they can find food. Typically, for our perspective, that means south. They're going to get away from the snow. Now, a red-tailed hawk is kind of lazy about that migrating. They go as far south as they have to. So there's a pretty good chance there's a hawk near you who doesn't have to migrate for whatever reason. Maybe that bird is just a really good hunter and she's figured out, snow, no problem. I'm just going to go down by the highway. I'm going to go behind the wherever, and I'm going to be able to find food. Some of them just get lucky, right? Live someplace where food's available, even though maybe normally it wouldn't be. We're getting some good comments. He is beautiful, isn't he? And red-tailed hawk, too, guys, is a bird that, like all of the animals that I like talking about, are animals that live near us. Like, I don't have a python today. I don't have a tiger or a penguin. Those are awesome animals, but they don't live here. And to see one, we've either got to turn on a screen or we've got to go to the zoo. A red-tailed hawk, you today could see one. This time of year, they like hanging out around the highways. A little easier to hunt there. Of course, hanging around the highways can be dangerous, can it? Yeah. It's something that all of our animals at the museum have in common is that they're here because they can't be out in the wild. This bird was hit by a car a couple years ago, and it broke his wing. It broke his wing right at the wrist. So what that means is his wing doesn't work right anymore. And with a wing that doesn't work right, he can't fly properly. Yeah. He flies straight pretty good. He flies down, awesome. He's the king of flying downhill. He can't do up, though. For him to get up off the ground, he has to climb trees, like you or I might do. And although that might mean if this bird was in the woods, we'd have a really hard time catching him, it does also mean he's not going to be able to get his food. And he's not going to be able to get out of here when it snows. Where I am right now, we have 3 feet of snow on the ground. He's not going to be able to see a mouse digging under that, is he? So I see we've got a bunch of people out there, and I remember you guys, those of you who just joined in, if you have questions, don't be shy. Put them in the chat box. If the chat box isn't working for you, make it so I can see you and do one of these things, and we'll get you unmuted. Any questions? Did you see that? Did you guys catch that? Yeah. That's actually the most dangerous end of a hawk right here. That's where the poop comes out. Yeah. Now I have to mop the floor. We should point out there are other things about a hawk that are kind of dangerous, especially if you are one of these little critters he wants to eat. Take a look at those feet, guys. Yeah. See those toenails? These are the talons. These are the weapons that every hawk, falcon, owl, and eagle are going to use to catch their food. And that's why we call this bird a raptor. Some of you probably heard that before, right? You've heard of a raptor, and maybe they were talking about a bird of prey. Maybe they were talking about a dinosaur. Yeah. And that dinosaur raptor actually got its name the same way the hawk did. Not because of the sharp toenails, because of the grabbing. Yeah. The raptor dinosaurs, when the scientists put their skeletons together, they saw that they could do this. And they went, oh, this dinosaur can grab stuff. Let's call it a grabberosaurus. Yeah. But that's kind of a silly name, right? So they use Latin into the word reptare, which means to seize or to grab. And they said, we'll call it a grabbing dinosaur. We'll call it a raptor. Just like our hawk is a grabbing bird. Oh, here's some questions. All right. So do they live alone in the wild, or do they live with family units? For the most part, birds of prey live in pairs. So Mr. and Mrs. Red-tailed Hawk are going to live together. They're going to have their kids in the spring. When those kids grow up, by the end of the summer, early fall, they're going to go off on their own. And with a lot of the hawks, mom and dad will then separate for the winter. And in the spring, they come back together again. We really only have one hawk in North America that lives in a family unit, like a group year-round. And that's a bird called a Harris's hawk that lives in the southwestern United States. And they live together like a pack of wolves. They'll even hunt cooperatively. You might see Mr. and Mrs. Hawk working together a little bit, but unless they're Harris hawks, that's unusual. Yeah, they're pretty territorial, and they pair up more than anything else. Cool. So getting out of here, migrating as a way to survive the winter is kind of cheating, isn't it? Yeah, that's not dealing with it. It's just leaving. And so we'll move on from the red-tailed, and we'll look at somebody who can't migrate now. Although sometimes this little guy makes it so a big hawk doesn't have to migrate. All right, everybody. All right, you guys see this little guy? Isn't he cute? I see the couple faces I can see are all going, oh, yeah. So this is obviously a rabbit, right? He is not a wild rabbit. I should tell you right up front. He is a domestic rabbit. He's an unwanted pet. You know, a pet store bunny can't live out in the wild. And if someone doesn't want them in the pet as a pet, well, he can come and live with us. It gives us a chance to show you guys the rabbits. Now, some of you may have rabbits near your house. Does anybody have rabbits near their house? I see a thumbs up there. I see a hand up there. I see a digital thumbs up. Using the tools. Connor has done a Zoom or two, haven't you? Oh, there's another one. Excellent. So we might not necessarily see the rabbits that much in the wintertime, but if you go out in the yard, you can still tell they're there because of their footprints, right? Oh, there's somebody who has a rabbit at school. All right. The rabbit tracks we see in the snow really tell us what a rabbit does to deal with winter. And they basically do what we do. They just deal with it. And rabbits are going to be active all winter long. So they're not flying south. They're not sleeping somewhere. These guys are running around in the snow, trying to find food, trying to stay warm. You know, a lot of times people think rabbits are kind of cute and kind of wimpy, right? We're always like, oh, the poor bunny. Rabbits are tough. Think how tough you have to be if you sleep in the snow every night. Yeah. You got to search around to find whatever little bits of food you can eat. And still, they do it, and they live everywhere. A whole bunch of you guys said you had rabbits. Someone is raising their hand digitally. Is that, I'm going to pronounce your name wrong, but you know who you are, right? I think I can unmute you. Oh, I can ask to unmute you. It's up to you to do it yourself.
No, actually, I was just doing the sign.
Oh, okay. I thought that was my hand.
The clapping sign, not the hand up.
Clapping sign. All right. So you guys, the kids are much better at this than I am. So thank you very much. So the rabbit is a tough little animal. Everybody wants to eat these things, and still they succeed and survive out in the wild. One of the things that helps them is rabbits have very thick, warm fur, so the cold weather isn't such a big deal. Also, they'll eat, I mean, just about anything. There's over 400 different kinds of plants that rabbits like to eat. So if there's some bark or some buds, or maybe you guys have a compost pile, there might be something they can eat out of the compost pile. They can survive the winter eating those little, I mean, to us, it seems like nothing, right? Oh, I'm going to scrape some bark off a twig. That's my breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That sounds awful, doesn't it? Rabbits, no problem. That's how they're going to go through the whole winter, eating that kind of stuff. While the foxes and the coyotes and all these predators, most of our predators stay active in the winter. And they're chasing around looking for things like rabbits. When you're an animal, excuse me, that eats other animals, winter is actually a pretty good time for you. You don't have to worry about apples or anything like that. You're looking for animals that are having a hard time surviving. And guys, this is not a sickness cough. This is I should have had a drink of water before I started talking cough. Hopefully we'll work through it. Otherwise I'm going to have to drink out of the turtle tank, and nobody wants to see that. So do we have rabbit questions? Can we see his or her paws? You bet. There we go. How am I doing there? There we are. Pretty cute, huh? And there's the back feet. Now you might notice too, The rabbit also has some talons, doesn't he? He has some good sharp toenails there. And they can use those toenails to dig, and they can also use them to protect themselves. With so many animals trying to eat rabbits, they need a lot of good defenses. Our little eastern cottontails, that's probably the rabbit you guys have in your backyard, right? They kind of look like this guy. Little brown bunnies, not much bigger than this, about the same size. Probably bigger ears. Doesn't look like their face got squished, right? Those rabbits do stay brown all winter. We have another rabbit in the Northeast, the snowshoe hare, that can turn white and disappear in the snow. Why isn't there toe prints in their tracks? Oh, I love it when people go out tracking. That's awesome. It's like the best thing to do in the winter. And the reason a lot of times we don't see, well, I mean, sometimes it's just your snow conditions, right? The snow isn't right to show them. But you'll notice the bottom of his foot is all covered with fur, right? It acts like it's to keep the bottom of his foot warm. And by having the bottom of his foot covered in that fur helps keep him a little warmer. But it also makes it so awful hard to see those footprints. If you guys are into tracking, there's a lot of great resources out there. I bet the library has some books on tracking, right? Maybe? Yeah. A lot of great resources, and you don't have to be out in the wilderness to do tracking. You can follow rabbits and crows and house cats. There we go, right around your neighborhood, which is a lot of fun to do. So looking at our time, good. 2 animals down. Now mammals, like a rabbit or a coyote or a deer or you, have more options than a lot of other types of animals do with how they deal with winter. The rabbit just stays active. He's out there just dealing with it. An animal like a caribou would migrate, or a reindeer would move. Some animals just sleep a little more. Let's meet one of them. Now, some of you are probably thinking hibernating, right? Thinking hibernating? Anybody? Yeah. We're not going to meet a hibernator. Haha. Because there's something else. Sweet. I put her in a carrier that's too small. There we go. Haha. Do we know what this thing is? It's not a rat. Don't say it's a rat. It'll hurt her feelings. Yeah, it's an opossum. This is an opossum. And opossums are animals that when I was a little kid, they were just barely showing up in the Northeast. They're an animal that originated down in South America. And after the last ice age, when the woolly mammoths were running around, they started moving north. By the time the settlers got here from Europe, the Pilgrims, those guys, they had made it about to Virginia, maybe southern New Jersey. And that was as far as they were going to get, because opossums have some real big problems with winter. You see these cute little fluttery ears? You see this long, skinny, naked tail? You see that? Yeah, there you go. You see those cute little paws with all her funny little toes? No insulation. Frostbite is a huge problem for opossums. The cold weather really beats them up awful. But when we showed up, we started building sheds and barns. We started throwing garbage all over the place, which of course isn't good, but it was good for opossums. They could use our buildings for shelter to get out of the cold, even if it just meant crawling underneath the shed or hiding in the back of the garage. The food we left all over the place was something they could eat. Opossums, even more than the rabbit, will really eat anything. They also eat meat. So they eat plants, meat, they'll eat pizza and walnuts and eggs and broccoli, and they don't care. They'll eat everything, which is a great advantage for them, especially when they move into new territories like New York. Hey, there's a good question. So cute. Is it a baby? She's not a baby. She is full grown, She might grow a little bit more. She's about 9 months old now. Now, for us, 9 months old means a baby, right? When an opossum is 8 months old, she's old enough to be a mom. Yeah. So if she had a boyfriend and she was out in the wild, she could be having babies. And she will only live, if she lived in the wild, she'd only live 1 or 2 years. They're very short-lived. Even living with us at the museum, where she doesn't have to worry about it getting cold or getting eaten by anything or finding food, she'll still probably only live about 3 years. The records are around 5 or 6 years is how long an opossum might live with people. Can they climb trees? They sure can. The opossum is the ultimate generalist. They can do everything, but none of it really super good. They climb trees, but not as good as a cat. They run, but not as fast as a dog. They swim, but not as good as a beaver. You know, they're actually kind of like us, really. They can do all kinds of different things. Pretty much any way of moving that's not flying, an opossum can do. They're just not the best at any of it. So if an opossum comes up against a bobcat, they've got to get in a hole because bobcat can't do that. Comes up against a coyote, it's got to get up a tree because the coyote can't do that. But it doesn't work the other way around. Does she have a pocket? She sure does. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get the angle to show you guys. Actually, we'll let her settle down a little first before I try. Want this? Here, we'll give her a little treat. Ow, that's my hand. Here, you want this? All right, she doesn't want it. Stage fright. So the question about the pocket, did you guys know this? An opossum is a marsupial. That's just like a kangaroo or a koala. When she was born, she was just this little tiny, like little jelly bean. Her eyes weren't developed. She didn't have ears. She didn't even have back legs. And she just kind of crawled her way up into her mom's pouch. And that's where she stayed for about 2 months. And right when she was coming out of that pouch, starting to ride around on her mom's back, her mom got hit by a car. And that's why we have her. There were 10 baby opossums. Someone found them on the side of the road and they brought the babies to a wildlife rehabilitator. The rehabber was like, no problem. We do possums all the time. These babies are going to be fine. And then she noticed that 3 of them had some problems with their feet. Their feet hadn't grown correctly. So they weren't able to climb. Like she doesn't really climb at all. They weren't able to run right. So the wildlife rehabilitator, who's kind of like a vet for wild animals, decided that she and her 2 brothers would not be able to go out into the wild. They wouldn't be able to survive. And then she started cuddling it and loving it and looking for a home for them. And they became very people friendly. So there's another reason they won't survive out in the wild. And eventually they came to live with us here at the museum. There you go. You guys notice how she's kind of keeps digging into my armpit there? Yeah. They are diggers. You guys have got to have opossum questions. They are the weirdest little animal. And then we haven't even talked about what opossums do to get through the winter. No questions? All right. So what an opossum does is something that raccoons do, something that skunks do. They become what's often called dormant, or they go into torpor, where these little animals won't really hibernate, but they sleep a lot and they slow down and their bodies cool down a little bit. But really it's more like they just sleep a lot, you know, like maybe some of you guys do that in the winter. You just kind of lay around, sleep a lot, watch TV. Yeah, that's what opossums do in the winter. And then, you know, they get hungry, they go out and they look for something to eat, or there'll be some warm days and they'll go out and run around. This week, the opossums are going to be super happy because it's a little bit warmer, at least for us. There's some questions. Are they nocturnal? Opossums are active pretty much any time of the day or night around us, and really most animals are like this. They tend to be nocturnal. Staying out of the way of people is a pretty good survival strategy for most wildlife, and opossums have really got that figured out. They're totally able to function in the daytime, but most of the opossums we're going to meet are nocturnal, just more in habit though than need. Are they originally from Australia? No. Their closest relatives are from South America, and that's where they originated, in South America. And South America and Australia, you know, like New Zealand, that part of the world, that is the place where you're going to, those are the places where you'll find the most marsupial stuff. Yeah. Can they get rabies? So can an opossum get rabies? Yes, they can. But it's super hard for them to get rabies. Rabies does not like living inside an opossum. You know, so it is possible, but it's super unlikely. Lyme disease is another thing. You guys might have heard of Lyme disease. It's something we can get from ticks. Opossums do seem to be immune to that. They're also really good at eating ticks. Not because they're out hunting for them. I mean, but look at her. She's a little dust mop. Everywhere she goes, ticks are just going to pile up on top of her. She's like perfect for collecting ticks. And when she goes to clean off her fur, she's really good at picking them off and eating them. Whereas a lot of other animals aren't so good at getting the ticks off, or they can get them off, but then they don't eat them. One study figured an opossum goes through about 5,000 ticks a year. It's quite a few ticks.
Somebody asked, do they change colors with the seasons?
Do they change color with the seasons? No, not really. They're pretty much like this. You get some, I mean, there'll be some color variation in opossums, but they don't turn white in the winter or anything like that. There's that snowshoe hare, right? And there's some weasels that will do it, for us anyway, in this part of the country. Do they get a bad rap? Yeah, they do. A lot of people don't like opossums very much, and they say they're ugly or nasty. They do smell kind of weird, kind of like peanut butter ferrets. I don't know. It's a weird smell. But I don't know. I think they're kind of ugly cute. You know what I mean? They're not traditionally cute, but they're such neat little animals. Some more questions. Yeah, they do get a bad rap. One of the problems opossums run into is when they get scared, like say somebody comes along, maybe the dog gets them cornered in the backyard. One of their defenses is just to try to look scary. So they make this weird kind of face, and they hiss, and they make awful noises. And so I can imagine you come around the corner and your dog has got her up against the wall and she's making that face. They do have a mouthful of sharp, sharp little teeth. I could imagine someone saying, oh, opossums are awful. But you know what happens? If that dog keeps going after her, she'll pass out. Yeah, true. We might call it playing possum. And a lot of times we think that they're pretending to be dead, but really they faint. They just kind of go and fall right over. Yeah. Which turns out is a pretty good defense against a lot of predators, because they also kind of, poop at the same time when they pass out. Very embarrassing, I'm sure. But it also means they smell awful. So I guess the idea is the coyote comes along and goes, aha, a possum. Oh, it's dead. It stinks. I don't want to eat it. Unfortunately, it doesn't work against cars. So a lot of opossums do get hit by cars. Yeah, why do they faint? It's just how they react to extreme stress. Very weird. There's some goats who do that too, these fainting goats. Do they have a good sense of smell? Yeah, that's probably their best sense. They have a great sense of smell. They're going to follow their nose around looking for food. Their eyesight is nowhere near as good as ours. They see a little better in the dark than we do. Their ears, these weird little origami ears, they can fold them in all kinds of different directions, but not necessarily spectacular hearing or anything like, oh, look at that. It's like a meme. All right.
Mr. Mike, there was another question asking what the opossum's name is.
Oh, what her name is. Actually, she does not have a name yet. Since we just got these guys in the fall, it was really too cold for them to live outside. So we have them in temporary housing indoors, and we're doing a fundraiser to build a nice big outdoor enclosure for them for the spring, summer, and fall. And the people who donate the most to that fundraiser are going to name the opossum. So she'll probably be Opossum Face or something like that. All right, guys, let's see somebody else. Oh, there's a question. Oh, cute. Good. Here, sweetie. Here you go. They're such funny little animals. They have thumbs on all 4 feet, so their footprints are actually pretty easy to recognize once you're looking for it, because all 4 feet have got a little thumb sticking off them. Now, some animals like a woodchuck or a little brown bat, they're going to hibernate, which basically means they shut down for the winter. Their heart almost stops beating. They almost stop breathing. Their temperature goes down to just above freezing. And that's really what hibernation is. And if we found an opossum kind of snoozing underneath the porch, waking her up would be about as hard as waking one of you guys up when you were asleep. To wake up a hibernating animal would be a much bigger deal. I mean, if you dug up a hibernating woodchuck tomorrow, dug in the ground and pulled the little guy out of its burrow, it would be like a dead woodchuck. You'd think you'd found something dead. And it would very slowly start to get the engine going again, and it would start to wake up. Reptiles or cold-blooded animals, if they're cold, they don't rev up again. Their body temperature is the same as the temperature around them, which can be really scary if you live someplace where the temperature gets below freezing. Because if your body gets below freezing, you know what that does to you? You freeze. There's some thumbs down icons for that one. They freeze. And freezing is super bad for you. And most animals, when they freeze solid, they die. So our reptiles have to find a way to escape that. And a lot of them just try to get down underground. Now, I'm going to bring an animal out that sometimes people don't like very much. So I want to warn you, so you can run out of the, no, don't run out of the room. You've got a screen. We've got miles between us. You're totally safe. But we have a snake I'm going to bring out. She is a native snake. She's actually the largest snake that you'll find in New York or Vermont. She is the black rat snake. They can grow to be about 8 feet long. This one's about 5 feet long. She's an adult. And right now, her wild relatives are out there somewhere deep underground. They found a place. Well, their great grandparents found a place where they could get below the frost line, so they aren't going to freeze. They can get down near the water that's deep underground, so if in the middle of the winter they need a drink, they can get a drink. And those snakes are just kind of sitting there. They're just like in low gear, not really doing anything. I see your questions. Don't worry, I'll get them. And that place is actually called a hibernaculum. And you'll see a whole bunch of different kinds of snakes down in those hibernaculums with the eastern rat snakes. Timber rattlesnakes are one of their favorite roommates. Yeah, great roommates. But unlike the rattlesnake, here's your question. The rat snake is not venomous. You guys must think I'm nuts carrying around a venomous snake like this. But the way we can tell for northeastern snakes, it's actually really easy. For a snake that's native to this part of the world, you can tell right away if it's venomous, because our only venomous snakes we have here are vipers. And those snakes have big diamond or triangle shaped heads. If you get real close, they have a slit pupil like a cartoon snake. This snake has a small head, right? And if you get real close, I don't know if that's focusing or not. Is it? I don't know. She has a round, I get a big head shape.
A little blurry, but.
You'll come in like this. How about that? Anyway, she has a round pupil, just like we do. So if you're in really the northern United States or Canada, and you see a snake with a small head and a round pupil, it's a totally harmless snake. It cannot hurt you. As a matter of fact, she's a pretty good sized snake, isn't she? If she decided to bite me on the ear right now, just bam, right on my ear, I'd just have a funny looking earring. Yeah. Snakes cannot bite hard. They can't chew. They can't take a chunk out of anything. They do have very sharp, teeny, tiny little teeth. So if she bit me really hard on the ear, yeah, I might bleed a little bit. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever wandered into a raspberry bush or been scratched by a cat, maybe something like that. That's about as much harm as she's able to do. Actually, the cat can hurt you way worse with its claws than she can with her teeth. And a lot of that is she just has really weak jaws. She can't just bite hard. Part of that is because of how they eat. I see we have a question. How often do they eat? Our snakes eat about once a week at the museum. And for her, that's either a really big mouse or a small rat is usually what she's eating. When we get into the winter, even though where she lives, it doesn't really change that much so far as temperature or anything, she does skip a lot of meals. Just something hardwired in her head tells her she's not supposed to be eating, because those wild reptiles with their bodies at about 40 or 50 degrees deep underground, they shouldn't eat. If they eat, they're not going to be able to digest their food, and it'll kill them to eat in the middle of the winter. With this snake, because she lives someplace where it's warm, she's fine. She can eat if she wants to. A lot of times she just doesn't feel like it. How does she capture her food? Well, she's a constrictor. So you see how she's all wrapped around my hand right now? She's not trying to catch me or anything. She's just holding on. But if my hand was, say, a rat, she would grab on with her mouth, those little teeny tiny teeth, right? And then she'd wrap her body around it like this, and she'd squeeze. And she'd squeeze and squeeze and squeeze. And when that animal breathed out, you guys do that. Do a big breath out and feel what your ribs do. You feel your ribs kind of scrunch in a little bit? When that happened, the snake would tighten up, not for you. Oh, no. For that rat, right? Would tighten up on that rat. And then the next breath, it would tighten up a little more. And then it would eventually suffocate the rat. Could she choke a human? Nah, we're too big. She's not strong enough. Even I can see a few kids here that you guys are all strong enough. When you get into some of the bigger constrictors, big pythons, big boas, they could, if you were by yourself, they could hurt you. And some of the giant constrictors like they have in Asia and Africa do get big enough to actually eat us. With a snake, one part of those weak jaws is that they're very stretchy. So she can swallow something about 4 times the size of her head, no problem. So she can eat a squirrel. Just down it goes. You imagine that, guys? If your jaw could just stretch out and your head could stretch and you could swallow something 4 times bigger than your head, everyone in your family would get a turkey at Thanksgiving. You could take that whole turkey and just, down it would go. The moms are all like, no way, too expensive. The dads are like, I'm not cooking that, right? So you need a pretty big snake before it can look at us as food. And there's nothing native to North America that falls into that area. If you guys get down in Florida, we do now have some constrictors big enough in Florida that are escape pets, things like that could be dangerous potentially to people. All right, so deep down underground, most of our reptiles are doing that. They're getting down below that frost line. Most of our amphibians are doing that, getting deep enough that they won't freeze. Some animals, though, a lot of our frogs, our turtles, they do something completely different. And you guys are about to get the weirdest science fact ever. You ready for it? Watch for it. When you hear it, let me know when you heard it, okay? Because we're going to meet another reptile who does not go deep underground. This guy goes to the bottom of the pond. Hey, look at you, fella. All right. Who knows what this is? Somebody write it down. What is this guy? Here's a hint. Oh, someone got it. This is a snapping turtle. And if you meet a snapping turtle this summer walking down the street, don't run up and try to pick her up. Look at this belly, guys. Most of that belly is soft. A snapping turtle cannot hide in its shell like other turtles do, right? Their defense, the way they protect themselves is by swimming away. Swimming down to the bottom of the pond, holding their breath for an hour, right? That's a good defense against people. On land, they can't do that. So a snapping turtle will bite you on land, no doubt about it. And when you see a snapping turtle on land, it's almost always a girl. Yeah, this one's a boy. And you would never expect to see a male snapping turtle out of the water like this. They stay in the water where it's safe. The girls have to come out of the water in the late spring and early summer usually. Do you guys know what they're doing? The boys can't do it. Anybody know? What do mama turtles do on the beach? There you go. They lay their eggs. You got it. So mama turtle's going out to lay her eggs. She can't do that in the water. She has to be up on land for that. And that's why she's out there. But she sees you coming. She's going to be scared. And she will bite you. And a snapping turtle this size bites about as hard as I do. How hard is that? Think about how hard you guys can bite. Some of you have probably chewed up a pencil or two, right? Don't tell your teacher, but I'm sure some of you have. She really, I mean, this guy, if he really got me just right, he could bite off a little finger, something like that. Luckily, this turtle, well, luckily for me, not luckily for him, when this turtle was a brand new baby, right out of the dirt, someone found him and they brought him home and they kept him as a pet. Now in Vermont, that's illegal. You're not supposed to do that. And really, guys, wild animals as pets, you really shouldn't do that no matter what the animal is. But they kept him for about 4 years before he came to us. And in that time, he thought people were nice. Yeah. He grew up believing that people are awesome and they bring you snacks, right? And unfortunately, that's not always the case. A lot of times, we're pretty rough on snapping turtles when we meet them. So when he was brought here, we called the state and we said, hey guys, we've got a snapping turtle that doesn't. He's our friendly snapping turtle. And what should we do with him? And they thought we'd better for us to keep him, show him to people like you. So you guys could see, learn a little bit about snapping turtles. So how big can snapping turtles get? They top out at about 30, well, usually they're going to weigh about 35 pounds out in the wild. This guy weighs about 20 pounds. Now that's a big, big snapping turtle. The record wild snapping turtles are closer to 50 pounds. So they can get pretty huge. A snapping turtle will grow for its entire life. And they live about 100 years if they can stay out of our way. They do really well once they hit adult size. Now, they like it in the water. They love it in the water in the winter time because they're not going to go down into some cave somewhere. A snapping turtle is going to swim down to the bottom of the pond and wait. There are some real problems with that plan, aren't there, guys? Yeah, snapping turtle doesn't have gills like a fish. Snapping turtle needs oxygen like we do. There's no oxygen under there. But luckily, they've got some crazy adaptations. One thing that helps is he's cold-blooded. So in cold water, his body moves slower. His heart beats slower. His blood moves slower. He's just like super slow when he's cold. He doesn't even need very much oxygen to survive. He needs so little oxygen to survive that he can actually open up his mouth and the water goes into his throat and he can absorb oxygen through the lining of his throat. Almost enough to survive. You guys ready for that crazy science fact? Here it comes. For him to survive, to get enough oxygen, he's going to open up the other end. Water's going to go up into his intestines, and he's going to breathe through his butt. Right? Isn't that nuts? Yeah, they absorb oxygen through their intestines, so they're able to survive the winter. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. And most of the turtles that live in the Northeast, that's how they're surviving the winter. They're down there right now. They're under the ice, breathing through their butt. Isn't that weird? Crazy. They've got a bunch of other neat tricks too to help them survive the winter. A lot of them get kind of sciencey and tricky. Let's try this one though. Have you guys ever run so hard and so fast or played for so long that you got cramps? Like your muscles hurt in your side, you got like a stitch in your side. Have you guys ever had that happen? Yeah, one thumbs up. Awesome. The rest of you guys got to get outside and start exercising. What's going on with you? Nah, just kidding. But when that happens, what happened was your muscles wanted more oxygen than your lungs could give them, basically. And when they run out of oxygen, your muscles kind of change gears. They're like, well, all right, we still got to run because your muscles don't know why you're running. Maybe there's a lion chasing you. They don't know. So we got to keep running. So they change gears and they work a different way, but it's not a great way. It makes all this kind of garbage, this acid it's called, and that's what gives you the cramps. The turtle can exercise underwater, swimming around in the middle of the winter. His muscles are like, okay, we got to keep going. We don't know why. Maybe there's a lion chasing us. It starts making that acid. But the turtle can do something we can't. It can use the chemicals in its shell, the minerals in its shell, to get rid of that acid so they don't get cramps. Isn't that crazy? So some people will go ice fishing and they look down into the ice, they look under the water and they see a turtle swim by. They're like, what? How'd that happen? And that's why it can happen. All right, I see a no, I see a yes for Michael. I don't know what that means.
Someone asked how much.
Oh, the exercise. Yeah. I'm sorry, what was that?
Someone asked how much does he eat? I don't know.
Oh yeah, how much? Oh, I see it. Yeah, how much does he eat? You know, he really, I mean, for the size of the animal, he doesn't really eat that much. He eats, boy, I'm trying to figure out a good way to equate it. He eats a variety of foods, but it works out to probably like 2 mice a day worth of food. And he doesn't just eat mice. He eats lots of other things. And really, he should eat more of his vegetables than he does. A wild snapping turtle this size would be pretty close to a vegetarian. He won't eat his vegetables most of the time. So he gets a lot of turtle chow so he can get all his vitamins and minerals, and he'll eat that. And then fish and mice and other stuff. Yep. And I think that answered to what does he eat. Do they change the pH in the pond? Huh. I don't know. Good question. I know in small ponds, they'll definitely change the water clarity because they'll dig in the mud and they'll cloud the water all up in a small pond. Not that that necessarily would affect the pH, but I'm not sure what the pH answer would be. I would think I wouldn't expect a big pond they would have any measurable effect on it. Okay, guys. So I'm looking at the clock. We're getting close to 5. You guys have any other questions or anything? We do have one last critter we could look at who just does something crazy. I'm all wet now from that snapping turtle. All right, any other questions? I don't see any other questions. All right, let's see a little tiny animal now. Somebody little. So when we introduce the snake, can you guys see him? What are we focusing on? Did that work? Did that help?
Yes.
There he is. All right. So when we introduced the snake, I mentioned how if the temperature got below freezing, that would be really bad, right? Because freezing solid is super bad for you. That'll pretty much kill anybody if you freeze solid. That's not the case for this little guy. I'm trying to figure out how to see. Maybe get him close enough. There he is.
Yeah, that helped. Now he's in focus.
So this is a gray tree frog. Whoops, there he goes. This is a frog that lives right in your backyard. But right now, this little guy is not deep down in some cave. He's not at the bottom of the pond breathing through his butt. Right now, the gray tree frogs are just barely under the surface of the ground. They've dug down into the leaves, maybe into the dirt a little bit. And what happens to those leaves in that dirt when the temperature gets way down low? You guys know? It's that thing that's super bad for you. Come on, someone type it quick. We're just going to lose all our time waiting for someone to type the word freezing. Come on, guys. What? So this, they freeze and die. Half correct. Yes. The gray tree frog. Awesome, you guys. You are on it now. The gray tree frog and 2 other frogs that live in our backyards all freeze in the winter. So the wild gray tree frogs right now are frozen solid. They're like little frozen frogsicles. Their heart's not beating. They're not breathing. Their blood is not moving. They are, I mean, really, by any definition, those little guys are dead. If you went out and dug one up and brought it home, put it on your kitchen table, because that's what we do with dead things we find, right, guys? Put it on your kitchen table, and that little frog would start to thaw out. And as its body thawed out, its heart would start beating. Its brain would start firing. It would start breathing. Its blood would start moving. And that little frozen frog would thaw out and start hopping around your house. Isn't that crazy? If you took the most incredible, powerful, impressive animal in all of Africa and froze it solid, it would die. No doubt. Same, any place. There are some insects that can pull that trick off, some fish that can, some amphibians that can. We have 3 of them that live right here. The good old gray tree frog is one of the coolest ones, though. You look at his little feet. He has little Spider-Man suction cups on his feet. These frogs can climb glass if they want to. They also change color. And you see the color he has already is pretty much bark colored. And he can get a little darker or a little lighter just to blend in better. He can change that pattern on his back. When he gets scared, like say maybe somebody finds him, a blue jay or something, goes, aha, a gray tree frog, comes down and lands to eat it. That frog will jump away. And when it does, you guys look, I think you'll be able to see this. Whoops, if he doesn't spin around backwards. You guys see that color under his legs? I don't know if you can see it. He's got some bright yellow underneath his legs. The thought is when that predator comes and goes, aha, I found you, frog. And the frog jumps and it goes, whoa, what was that? It sees that flash of yellow and it's called a startle color. Now, a lot of times people are not super impressed with that as a defense. But imagine if tomorrow morning you come down to breakfast, you're like, woo, pancakes, my favorite. And you take some syrup and you're going to pour the syrup on it. And all of a sudden those pancakes flash yellow. You're going to go, whoa. And that's going to give the pancakes a chance to get away. Mm-hmm. And that's the thought, that frog jumps and that predator goes, whoa, what's that yellow? And that gives the frog a chance to get away. Yeah, there you go. Is the underside of his leg yellow? And the question, what does he eat? Like pretty much I'm going to say pretty much every other frog, he is a predator. So he eats a lot of insects. They actually, hunting up in the trees, they love to eat moths and flying insects. They'll eat caterpillars. I mean, they'll eat worms. Really, frogs will eat almost anything they can get in their mouth. But yeah, if you ever see a frog big enough to fit you in its mouth, run. Don't go anywhere near it because they will eat you. Frogs are tough. But this is kind of, to me, this is like the most extreme way to survive winter. Freeze solid and live. Way bigger deal than that old hawk flying down to Texas, or even the rabbit scratching a living out in the snow. And this guy, we've met a few different animals here. Can they eat invasive moths? Boy, depending on, there might be some moths that have defenses against frogs. Depends which moth you're talking about. And I don't think they pass up any moth that they were able to catch. Yeah, really, frogs not really picky eaters overall. And this is a frog that once it thaws out, really as soon as it thaws out, this frog is one of the first ones to get active. And they'll be running around, depending on where you live, maybe even April or March, you'll have these frogs that'll be active again. It is warm today, but might be cold again soon. Will they thaw and freeze? Yes, they will. Isn't that crazy? They'll thaw out and they'll freeze again. They'll thaw out and they'll freeze again, and they will survive it. Just amazing. Hopefully you guys liked meeting these animals that we've had here today. They are just the tip of the iceberg. I guarantee you there is something amazing right near your house, right where you are right now. If you went outside, you would find something amazing. Maybe not right away. It might take a little while. You may have to just like play and explore and have adventures until the amazing thing came along. But I promise you guys, if you spend enough time outside, you don't have to go to Africa. You don't have to go to the rainforest. You don't have to go to the North Pole. There are incredible things right where you live. Frogs that freeze solid. Who knew, right? So I don't know if you guys have any last questions or not, or if the library, if you guys have anything you'd like to do to wrap us up. But those are the animals I have. I'd be happy to answer questions or anything. Oh, are they like lizards? Whatever they see, they change into. The color change seems to be a lot more related to moisture and temperature. With the tree frogs, at least, seems to have a lot of effect on how they change. When they get wet, they get darker. That makes a lot of sense if you think about it. You know, if you go and take some water and splash it on a rock or a tree, and it gets darker, it looks darker. Lots of questions. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you guys enjoyed the program.
Yeah, and for all the folks that are still here, check out the Schenectady County Public Library's YouTube channel. We post lots of virtual programs on there, science related, story times, and for a week following today, we're going to have a recording of Mr. Mike's presentation if you'd like to watch it back again. So check out our YouTube channel for some more virtual programs.
Yeah, if you guys find yourselves in Southern Vermont, right now we are open by appointment. So call ahead and come visit us. That'd be great.